Okay, so this was a problem that some of my students have ran across a few times, so I thought it'd be worth making a video about. So when you're making a web app, it's common to want individuals to be able to edit into the layer, either members of your own organization or group, or even the general public. One common task is is to create a hosted feature layer, and then that's published to ArcGIS Online that users can then draw into as point line or polygon features. But another situation that comes up is that you may want to be able to edit a table that's associated with a point line or polygon layer. So instead of editing the layer itself, you're editing a table that's related to it. So one example of this would be if you had like a bunch of restaurants and you wanted users to be able to add reviews for that restaurant. So you'd want to be able to store multiple reviews for every single restaurant. Okay, so I'm going to basically show you how to set up set up some layers and a map in a web app that allows for that. Okay, so the example I'm going to use here is for libraries in West Virginia. So I have a set of point layers representing libraries in West Virginia that I got from the West Virginia GIS Tech Center. So if you click on, I've started already configuring these a bit, so I added a symbol there. And I've configured the pop-up, so I've just got the location, the type, and the address, city, state, zip code, and phone number, and then we have the name of the library listed at as the header there. Okay, so in order to be able to edit into a table that's associated with this point layer, we first need to actually create a table and then an associated relationship class that links it to the library. Before we start, it's important to make sure that you have a unique identifier that you can use to relate the two things. So let's see, in this layer, we do have an object ID, and we have an ID, which it looks like it's just the object ID, that's of type long. So that should work. So I think I'm going to use this as my unique identifier. And note that that's a long data type, so whenever we create our link field in our table, we'll also need it to be a long data type. Okay, all right, so let's start off by making a table. So in order to do that, I'm going to go and open up the catalog view here. So catalog view, and we're going to go into this database. So this is the database for the project here, and there's the point layer that I'm editing into. Okay, so I'm going to do new and table. And on here, I'm going to define a table. So I'm just going to call it library entries or something. I'm not going to worry about putting an alias. We can add a bunch of fields here, but I prefer to just do it after the fact. So I'm just going to leave this alone for now and finish. Okay, so now we should have in here just a basic table. So I'm going to open this table and start editing it in terms of the attributes that are columns that we have to work with whenever it loads here. There we go. All right, so all I have right now is an object ID, so I'm going to add a few other fields. So let's say maybe the person would want to just provide like a rating, so we'll do user rating, and we'll make that a double data type. Maybe we'll do a date visited, and then make that a date data type. And like comments, so the user can leave some comments. And we'll make that a text, and we'll increase the length here a bit so they can provide a longer, we'll do up to 5,000 words or characters. And then we need a field that we can use to link the library data to this table to the actual libraries. And it's going to match the same data type as the unique identifier that we're going to use for the libraries. So to do that, let's just call this library ID, and then make sure it's a long data type. All right, that should do it. So let's hit save. Nope, I realized I just spelled that wrong. Yeah, we'll worry about that. Well, let's see, it probably won't let us change it after the fact. Well, let's see. I guess it will. Never mind, let's do save. Cool, okay, there we go. All right, so now we have our table created. Now the next step is we need to relate the table and the point layer. So we can do that with a relationship class. And this is one reason we're working inside of a file geodatabase instead of just having like a table and a shapefile, because these types of relationships are easier to set up in the database. So you want to go to New and then Relationship Class. Okay, so this opens the Create Relationship Class pane here, and we can start setting this up. So the original table is the point layer, which doesn't seem super obvious, which is the origin and which is the destination. But in this case, the origin is the point layer and the destination is the table. So that'll be our library entries. And I'll just let it leave its name there. Simple is good. That's good. That's good. Direct cardinality is important. We need to change that. So we want to be able to have multiple entries in the table for each individual library. So I'm going to change this from 1 to 1 to 1 to many. And then we need to specify the field that's going to maintain the relationship. So we're going to use this ID field and change this to library ID. And note it only works for the same data type. So these are both long data type. Okay, so that's just set that up. So hit run. Okay, so now you see we have another entry in here. We have the library point layer, the relationship class, and then the table. All right, so let's switch back to the map now. And just to check and make sure the relationship class seems to be working, we just want to check that out with editing in the editing mode. So we're going to go Edit and then Create. All right, so we see both of our features there. If we click Select and select a library, over here we should in this drop down see the link table. If we right click, we can do Add New to Relationship, and that will allow us to create a new feature that we can add to the relationship or whatever. Okay, cool. So that looks like it's working. Let's just do a discard. We don't want to save any changes there. Just as a quick side note too, if you're not seeing the attribute table when you're in editing mode, we just go back in here and go to Create. So we have our Create Features pane, and if you click on Attributes here, that opens up the Attributes pane. That's helpful if you want to edit the attributes. Okay, so it looks like we're good. So let's get this onto the web. All right, so first off, if you're publishing to the web, remember that your data need to be in WGS84 geographic coordinates or the WGS84 web Mercator projection. So just to check here, if I go into properties and that would be under source, and then spatial reference, yeah, that's in web Mercator. And then obviously the table is a spatial, so it doesn't have a projection. Okay, cool. So let's now go to share, and we could share the map or we could just share the layers. I'm just going to share the layers. So I'm just going to click this. Note that if you have already published something, you can also do overwrite layers, but we're publishing something from scratch. So I'm going to do publish web layer. All right, and then under configure, I guess under content, just make sure we have both our point layer and our table. That looks good. Let's call this West Virginia Library Data. And again, you should put tags and summaries and stuff, but I'm just going to do this quickly and delete it, so this isn't permanent. Libraries, let's do WebGIS for my WebGIS class. Okay, and then I'm going to create a new folder on my Arc Online, and we're going to call it West Virginia Libraries App. Okay, and then I'm just going to share this with my group, or my university, not my organization, not everyone for now. Okay, so let's do analyze. We'll probably get at least one. Yep, so this unique numeric IDs are not assigned. That's a common error. Double click. Allow assignment of unique numeric IDs. And then run that again. So I guess I need to do that, but anyway, that's good. This warning is just saying that it can't publish the base layers, which is fine because we don't need it to do that. Okay, so that looks good. Let's hit publish now, and let's get this published to the web. This shouldn't take too long because this is a fairly small layer, and the table's basically empty at this point. All right, so when that's finished up, and you go to the web, your ArcGIS Online account, you should see the layers that you published, right? Note that if you have Arc Online up, you may need to like refresh the page in order for it to reference that there's been changes made to the content. There we go. Okay, so here's my site. I'm just going to click on refresh here. Just to make this a little easier to see, I'm going to up the font size a bit. Okay, cool. So I should have in here a libraries example. There we go. And oops, apparently I already did this. I've used this before. There we go. So West Virginia Libraries app. Okay, there we go. So I've got my hosted feature layer and the service definition there. If I go into the hosted feature layer, we should have both of the objects. So I have my point and my table. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is make sure, well, first off, just check and make sure the sharing's good. So organization, that works. Let's go over here to settings and make sure editing is enabled. So we'll save that. Again, we could go through and configure it more specifically, but I'm not that worried about that for this. Note that if you want to make this so that anyone in the world could edit into it through Arc Online, you want to set it up for public data collection. But we don't need to do that for this, this example. It just would only work for people in my organization. Okay, so that's that. And then the next thing I want to do is I want to make sure users can attach photos to the to their entries. So I'm going to go here to the libraries table, and then so again, just do that. Show you that real quick. I'm in the hosted feature layer. We've got our sub layers, and so the layer and the table. I'm clicking on the table, and then down here in the corner, I've got enable attachments. I'm just going to turn that on. So now this means that when people add to the table or edit the table, they should be able to add attachments. Okay, so that looks good. So next thing I want to do is set up a map. So I'm going to do open in map viewer. And again, you probably want to spend more time with your own data than what I'm going to do here, because I'm just trying to show you a few things. But just a couple key things. I had already tried to configure the pop-up, so let's see if that looks good. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So I've basically just got the name of the library and then some of the other fields here. I've cleaned up the names. They have a better alias names. So that looks good. But again, you probably want to do that. I changed the point symbol to this library symbol. Another thing I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to change the name of this. So I'm going to do rename, and we'll just call it libraries. That'll look a little cleaner in the map. Okay. All right, so one thing that I've struggled with when I first was trying to figure this out, and by that I mean being able to edit into a table as opposed to the layer, is in order to do this, you have to set up a form. So to set up a form, over here on the right, there should be forms. It's in my more here, but that's because I have the icons big, but it should be at the bottom of this list here, so where there's this division. So I'm going to go into forms, and then I have to configure a form. Okay, so if you go all the way down here, you should see this related records. And I want to click add all, so there's one related record. And I'm just going to edit this, the name of this. There we go. Just we'll call it library data collection. And again, could configure it some, but that's fine. Okay, library data collection. Okay, so we have a form now. And the next thing I want to do is just check and make sure that I can see that form here in ArcGIS Online. Let me, real quick, I'm going to just try to make sure I can add pictures. So I'm going to use the Kingwood Public Library here. So I'm just going to save this picture. And again, you probably shouldn't be stealing pictures. I'm just doing this for an example. I'm going to get rid of it. So So I'm just going to save this image here on my computer. So to test, I have an image I can add to test it. And also just one other thing I want to do real quick. Let me save this. For the rating, let's just real quick. We'll set up a range values, which will just take a second. So let's do library map. Okay. All right, that looks good. All right, so I'm going to go back into my content real quick. So I just forgot to do this earlier, but I think it's kind of it's kind of important, but not just not super important, but worth doing. So I'm just going back into the table data here. I'm going to go to data and switch from table mode to fields mode. And then I want to click on this user rating. And I just want to set the min max there. So we're just going to set the minimum to 0 and the max to 5. And save. So that way that people can only edit or enter 0 through 5 numbers. And since it's a float or a double type, it can be, like 4.5 or something. Okay, good. All right, so let's now go back to our content. And I must have not saved that. I forgot to save that in this subfolder, it looks like. Or maybe it just hasn't updated yet. Where did I put it? Well, I'm not sure where my map went. Let me, well, let's just do a quick search. Here it is. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where that ended up. Anyway, going back in here to the map, and then let's just open it up, and let's just make sure that we can edit the table. All right. So let's get rid of this. So I'm going to click on the editing button here. So it's just like square with the pencil. And if I click on Kingwood Public Library, which I think is this one, actually I need to select it. Okay, so now you can see here that I have this library data collection. It says no records found because there's been no entries made, but I'm going to add one. So do add here. I'm just going to give it a 4.9. We'll just use today's date and time. That's fine. Great, library. And this automatically fills in. That's the link ID between the table there, the table and the point layer. And then I'm just going to add an attachment. So let me go and grab that image that I just put on my desktop here. And create. Cool. Okay, so now you can see instead of now saying no entries, it has an entry. And there's my entry with the picture associated with it. Okay, so the point is it looks like it's letting us edit into the table. So that seems good. All right, so now we should be ready to actually make an app, and this should be pretty quick. Again, you could do something more complicated. I'm just going to make a quick instant app just to show how this can be edited in an app. Note that this will also work if you're set up like the editing tools in like a Experience Builder app. Okay. So let's save. I guess this doesn't need, well, first off, we need to make sure the map is shared. So I'm just going to share my organization. That matches the layers that I'm using. And let's do, I guess that's everything. There's nothing that needs saved, apparently. And okay, so it should be good. So now let's start with an app. So under this like set of 4 squares, we can click there to create an app. We're just going to use Instant App. So since we want users to be able to edit, we're going to have to pick an app that allows for that. So I'm going to use the Sidebar app because I know that it allows for editing. So we'll do Sidebar, choose. I'm just going to add SB to this for Sidebar. And I'm going to move this into my library, West Virginia Libraries app folder. All right, and that launches the app builder window. All right, I'm going to turn off this express mode. So I get more options. And then the major thing I need to do is make sure that this can be edited. So let's click on sidebar, and then we need to turn on this edit tools. So that will add this editing tool wizard there. And then we have our libraries there, able to be edited. And again, you probably want to do some other stuff here. We could add like an about and maybe some other widgets and whatnot, but we don't really need to do that for this simple example. So okay, this looks good. So let's, I guess let's do a publish and confirm. Okay. And let's launch this. And we should now have an app. Okay, cool. So this is a pretty simple app. Obviously, again, the main point was just show you that you can edit into a table. All right, so first off, let's click on, here we go. So there's the info about the Kingwood Public Library there. Let's click on edit, and we'll do select this again. So we have our one entry that we already have, which I could go in and edit, or I could just do add record here, and I could add another entry with another photo and whatnot, but I don't think I need to set that up. That's fine. Okay, cool. So that's it. That's setting up where you can edit into a table that's linked to a point, line, or polygon layer, as opposed to editing into the table itself, or sorry, the vector data itself. And again, this is especially useful whenever you want to have like a one-to-many relationship, where you want to be able to add multiple records that are associated with a single geographic feature. So it's like collecting reviews or reports or something.